For a solid week or two now, Fox News has been standing in solidarity with the truckers of Canada, implying that they just care about the salt of the earth workers, and saying, promising in effect, that if a version of that protest starts here in the US, if truckers decide to fight against mandates or whatever, they will again stand with them. They're bringing on organizers who are trying to get something like this going. And we've said for some time now, well, what if the truckers had other goals? What if the truckers were organizing for something other than just not getting vaccines? If they wanted higher pay or greater benefits or safer work environments, would they actually acknowledge those sorts of protests? Well, that was presented as a hypothetical, but it doesn't have to be. It turns out actually very close to where we're broadcasting right now in the port of LA, there is a trucker strike. And so far, I don't see any coverage about Fox News on it. But what they're trying to fight against is actually pretty bad. So it involves a company called XPO Logistics. And we want to get into a little bit about how they're being treated, the nature of what they're fighting against. We're gonna start with this video.
La compañía es una compañía miserable que no tiene un sentido humano para con sus trabajadores.
It is heartbreaking. I have seen drivers show me their settlement statements where in any given week they may have owed money to the company. In other words, it says negative $200.
En un día promedio de 12 a 14 horas, probablemente 4 horas o 5 horas que no nos pagan.
They have worked a 40, 50-hour week, but because the deductions for their truck payment, for their repairs, for their maintenance, for their insurance, that week was more than they earned, they owe money to the company.
Mi experiencia que he trabajado en otras compañías como empleado, pues tenemos los beneficios como es de disability o desempleo, pagamos seguro social y para que tengamos un retiro en la vejez de seguro social, que esta compañía no nos da esa oportunidad.
Nos sancionan, ellos nos corren. Entonces, en la práctica somos empleados, pero en el esquema de contratación que es el engaño, somos independientes según la compañía.
So you can probably notice a little bit of a pattern there in the nature of the mistreatment. Not, setting aside, of course, that truckers who are actually classified as employees probably have quite a few grievances of their own. In this case, what we're seeing is effectively what we're seeing in a lot of different segments of the society. Massive, profitable corporations are refusing to acknowledge that their employees are actually employees so that they can mistreat them, pay them less, and deny them benefits. And you almost can't exaggerate how many different ways they are screwing over their employees who aren't employees. So according to the National Employment Law Project, overall, drivers that have been designated, or they'll say misclassified because this is not how it's supposed to work, as independent contractors earn nearly 20% less than those that have been designated as full-on employees. And the overall money that they're getting paid, again, remember, these are the people that Fox has been saying are absolutely crucial. Remember how angry they were at the backup at the port of LA, how products weren't getting in? Well, these are the workers working overtime to make sure that these profits go through. They earn something like $35,000 for driver employees and less than $29,000 for independent contractors. So low pay is the ground floor for the ways that they're being abused. But as was pointed out by multiple drivers in that video, they're not only denied fair wages and job protections, they also lose out on payroll taxes, get stuck with the costs of unemployment, disability services, worker compensation. Law-abiding employees have to compete with rivals operating on the cheap. So if you have a company that is actually hiring drivers as employees, they're gonna lose out to those that are effectively gaming the system to have sort of fake independent contractors as a ruse to not have to pay them. And so they don't get retirement, they don't get healthcare coverage, they don't get reimbursement for work expenses. They typically work a 90-day renewable contracts, which means they can be effectively fired at will with no recourse against effectively arbitrary treatment from the companies like XPO. So this is a bunch of workers, again, salt of the earth, heroes working during a pandemic to make sure the products we need are distributed. Where's Fox News? Where's their outrage?
I mean, yeah, I'm old enough to remember when we hated, welfare queens and people that sit on their lazy humps, and the people that get up every day and do some of the hardest, most important jobs in our country were the heroes. I remember when that was the messaging coming out of the right wing, but I guess things have changed. But what I will say is obviously bravo for these workers. The independent contractor designation is not just a financial one. They want it to have a psychological effect. They want you to think that it's you versus the big old scary company. And no worker in their right mind could ever think that they could take on a corporation of this size and this scale. So, they know what they're doing. And I do want to say this too, for people to understand how widespread this practice is. I happen to know some friends that worked at companies like MTV, VH1, Comedy Central, BT, all under the Viacom umbrella. And Viacom, it doesn't get much bigger and richer than Viacom. They were practicing in this too.
Yeah.
Okay, like firing people at the end of the year so that they don't meet the minimum work requirements for certain benefit packages, etc. Yeah, Sumner Redstone, he was one of the pioneers of this dirty, rotten practice. So just imagine they're doing this to people in cushy, creative industry, white collar jobs. You already know what they're gonna try to do to blue collar workers.
Yeah, and they're doing it. And in California state where there is always money to crush workers, to force them to operate as independent contractors. We haven't forgotten the ballot initiative from last time around. So in this case, XPO has gone to the National Labor Relations Board and said, you have to deny this petition to unionize because after all, they're not employees, they don't get to unionize, they're independent contractors. Well, with all those obstacles and at the risk of going slightly over, I wanna go to our last video, which gets into how those contractors are trying to fight back.
So even under the most stringent of employee status standards, these drivers have been found to be employees. So it is clear, the writing's on the wall. XPO may try to fight it, but these workers are gonna win their right to a union election. And based on what I've seen, they're gonna win their right to a union and a good, fair contract.
Siempre tienen la costumbre de intimidarnos, de que nos van a despedir, que se va a ir el trabajo para otro lado. No, nosotros somos indispensables en esta industria de camión. Ahorita podemos ver los puertos cómo están llenos, que no hay choferes. Solamente que ellos quieren robarnos más dinero de lo que nos corresponde. Por eso a mis compañeros, no tengan miedo.
Hay que pedir respeto, hay que exigirlo. ¿Por qué? Porque ellos no van a venir a ofrecerte seguro médico, no van a venir a ofrecerte un plan de retiro.
A la compañía le digo que nada más observe lo que la ley dice, que ya se le ha multado, ya se le ha dicho que somos sus empleados, pero ahora queremos que la ley obligue a la compañía a observar la ley y que no solamente le multe, pero que lo obligue.
So great work by More Perfect Union there, by the way, and hopefully hopefully this will work out in the right way.
Yeah, obviously we're pulling for those homies over there at that company, and again, it's in line with some of the labor militancy we're seeing across the country, across industries. It's about the only positive sign in our economy, the only positive sign for working people is what's been happening with all the labor militancy around the country. It's dope to see.
Exactly, yeah. And we're glad to hopefully get people interested in what's gonna happen to them, to shed a little bit of light on it. My advice to those drivers would be, if you want more mainstream coverage, have you considered being against vaccines? Maybe Greg Gutfeld will come out and profile you or whatever. I personally think you wanting to be treated with dignity and humanity and paid a wage commensurate with the effort you're putting out is enough for us to care about what happens to you, but not everybody agrees with that.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.